Welcome back to the Recap Central. Today we'll be recapping Man of Steel, 2013, directed by Zack Snyder, a film about a man from another planet with extraordinary abilities that has to take on invaders led by a fierce military leader from his home planet. Let's get started. On the distant planet Krypton, Lara Lor-Van has just given birth to a son, whom they name Kal-El. She and her husband Jor-El have defied the planet's laws, which mandate babies be created through genetic engineering using a planetary codex that determines their life roles. After their son's birth, Jor-El pleads with the Kryptonian Law Council to allow him to preserve the planet's growth codex and search for a habitable world beyond Krypton. However, the council is suddenly attacked by General Dru-Zod and his Sword of Ra followers, who kill High Eminence Ro-Zar and attempt to seize control of the planet in a coup. Jor-El, despite his disagreements with the council, refuses to join Zod, even though they were once friends. Zod orders Jor-El's arrest, but he escapes and heads to the planet's birthing chamber to steal the growth codex. Jor-El rushes back to his home, where Lara has found a planet to send their baby, Earth. Despite her sadness at losing their child, Jor-El believes that on Earth, their son will be free from the limitations imposed by Kryptonians and will thrive among humanity. As they prepare to launch the pod containing their son, General Zod and his followers enter their residence, demanding the codex. Jor-El refuses and informs Zod of Kal-El's birth and the hope he represents. Enraged by what he sees as heresy, Zod battles Jor-El but is quickly overpowered. Lara activates the launch, ignoring Zod's pleas to stop, and the pod takes off. Angry that Jor-El and Lara have removed the codex, which Zod sees as essential for Krypton's survival, he kills Jor-El and orders his followers to shoot down the pod. However, Kryptonian Sapphire Guard's ships arrive and arrest them, canceling the order. In the chaos, the pod's Phantom Drive activates, opening a portal to the Phantom Zone, and it disappears. General Zod and his followers are banished to the Phantom Zone as punishment by High Eminence Lor-M. Zod mocks the council and swears to find Lara's son. Shortly after, Krypton is destroyed. Many light years away, the pod carrying Kal-El lands on Earth near Smallville, Kansas, where he is adopted by local farmers Jonathan and Martha Kent, who name him Clark Kent. Years later, Clark embarks on a journey across North America. He responds to a distress call from a burning oil rig, rescues the crew, and prevents a collapse. He is unable to join them as he rushes to keep the rig from falling. As a child, he experiences a sensory overload at school when his X-ray vision activates uncontrollably, overwhelming him. His mother, Martha, helps him overcome the sensory overload by focusing on her voice. Afterward, he returns to land and borrows some clothes. As a teenager, Clark saves fellow students when their school bus crashes into a river, exposing his abilities. Jonathan Kent reveals Clark's alien heritage and the pod he arrived in, emphasizing the importance of discovering his origins. Clark secures a job at a diner in Canada, where he overhears soldiers discussing a mysterious object found in the northern ice. He intervenes when a trucker harasses a waitress, but the situation escalates, and he leaves without a word. Later, the trucker's rig is inexplicably impaled on tree logs. In Canada, reporter Lois Lane arrives at the base investigating the object Clark heard about. She meets Professor Emil Hamilton and Colonel Nathan Hardy, learning that drilling into the ice is ongoing, revealing ancient ice surrounding the object. While taking photos, Lois spots a man near the drilling site without proper cold weather gear and follows him to an ice tunnel. Clark discovers a peculiar spacecraft, activates it with his command key, and encounters a mysterious person who always stays ahead of him. During this, Lois is attacked by a sentry bot, prompting Clark to intervene. He uses his heat vision to heal her and then witnesses a massive ship emerging as the ice cracks open. Lois writes an article about her experience, but faces resistance from her editor, Perry White. She decides to leak the story through her contact Glenn Woodburn, hoping to get the attention of the person she met. Meanwhile, Clark pilots the spaceship to a remote Arctic location, realizing the person he followed is a holographic projection of his father, Jor-El. Jor-El explains the history of Krypton and the purpose of the Sentry ship. He also shares how artificial birth control led to the loss of choice on Krypton, making Clark's birth unique in its belief in aspiring to greater things. Jor-El further elaborates on the origin of Clark's extraordinary abilities. He explains that the Earth's sun is the source of his strength and sensory enhancements, as his cells absorb the sun's radiation. Jor-El also presents Clark with a dark blue and red uniform, symbolizing his mission to protect and assist the people of Earth. Clark tests his newfound powers by taking flying leaps and eventually mastering the ability to fly at tremendous speeds, even breaking the sound barrier. Meanwhile, Lois embarks on a quest to uncover the identity of her mysterious acquaintance. Her investigation leads her to Smallville and eventually to Martha, Kentucky. While visiting Jonathan Kent's grave, she encounters the enigmatic man, though he's not in his distinctive attire. Lois expresses her desire to share Clark's story, but he informs her of his commitment to his late father's wish, which is to remain hidden until the world is ready. He illustrates this with the story of Jonathan's death in a tornado, where he refrained from saving him to protect Clark's secret. Respecting Clark's decision, Lois abandons her story and returns to Metropolis. However, she faces a suspension from Perry White for publishing her previous article against his objections. Nevertheless, Perry acknowledges her for letting go of the story. Clark visits his mother and joyfully reveals that he has discovered his true origins and his biological parents. Despite Martha's concerns about losing her son, Clark reassures her that it won't happen. Simultaneously, the military becomes aware of a peculiar ship in geosynchronous orbit around the planet. Soon, others report this unusual sighting, but they are taken aback when the power is cut off worldwide. General Zod delivers a threatening message, demanding the surrender of Kal-El by Earth's inhabitants or his self-surrender within 24 hours, or there will be dire consequences. Glenn Woodburn is interviewed about the extraterrestrials and mentions Lois, leading to numerous FBI agents being dispatched to apprehend her. She is subsequently detained by the military. Back in Smallville, Clark visits a local church and confides in the pastor, revealing that he is the one the extraterrestrials are seeking. He grapples with his trust issues, torn between doubting General Zod's peaceful intentions and contemplating whether he can have faith in humanity. The pastor's advice encourages Clark to make a decision. Clark then presents himself to the army in his Kryptonian suit, offering to surrender on the condition that he can meet with Lois, who must be released. Clark is handcuffed, and he and Lois have a brief conversation in an interrogation room. She inquires about the S on his chest, and he explains that it's not ends as known by humans, but the Kryptonian symbol of hope. Clark stands up and effortlessly breaks his handcuffs, asserting to the onlookers, which include Swanwick, Hardy, and Hamilton, that he is not their enemy but is deeply concerned about Zod's intentions. In a remote desert, a dark vessel materializes with the purpose of transporting an individual to Zod's spaceship. This craft is under the command of Farah Ul, who insists that General Swanwick allows Lois to accompany them. Although Colonel Hardy initially specifies that the agreement was to hand over the alien, Lois joins the journey anyway. When Farah becomes distracted, Clark discreetly passes Lois the command key he had used to restart the Arctic ship. Before they reach Zod's vessel, Lois is equipped with a breathing apparatus because the ship's atmosphere won't be suitable for her. Once aboard the ship, Zod greets Clark, who shortly afterward collapses on the ship's floor, seemingly struggling to breathe. While Lois is concerned for him, Zod reassures her that Clark's body is simply adapting to the Kryptonian atmosphere on the ship. Clark loses consciousness and finds himself in a dream-like vision of his family's farm. Zod explains to Clark that after Krypton's destruction, the portal to the Phantom Zone, where they were trapped, was reopened. They used the portal's phantom drive to transport themselves across the galaxy, searching for colonized planets, but all were found to have perished. However, Zod and his followers salvaged what they could from their civilization, including a world engine, a device to alter planets to suit Kryptonians' needs. When Clark activated the scout ship in the Arctic, it sent a signal that led Zod and his officers to Earth. Zod now intends to transform Earth into a new Krypton, but Clark opposes this plan as it would lead to the extinction of the human race. Emerging from the vision, Zod reveals that he killed Jor-El and is determined to revive their civilization, with or without Clark, and will not tolerate any interference. As Zod departs, one of his men, Jack Shuar, extracts a blood sample from Clark, as the Black Zero's environment has neutralized Clark's powers, rendering him as weak as a human. Meanwhile, Lois is placed in a holding cell and discovers a panel with a small opening, identical in size to the key she possesses. Inserting the key causes information from Jor-El to appear before her. The key alters the ship's atmosphere to make it more suitable for both Clark and Lois, and Jor-El imparts valuable information to Lois on how to stop Zod and leads her to an escape pod. The change in atmosphere enables Clark to break free from his restraints, and Jor-El appears before him, emphasizing the need to rescue Lois since her escape pod was damaged by laser fire. Clark successfully rescues Lois from the pod, but his focus quickly shifts to his mother, who is under threat from Zod and Farah, visiting the Kent farm in search of the Codex. Farah locates Clark's pod, but there is no sign of the Codex. When Zod threatens Martha, an enraged Clark races to her rescue, engaging Zod and dragging him through a cornfield, in a fierce battle that propels them into downtown Smallville, crashing into a 7-Eleven. Upon recovering, Zod's breathing apparatus malfunctions, and his body begins to adapt to Earth's environment. He gains X-ray vision and superhuman hearing, much like Clark did when he first acquired his powers. Clark mentions that his parents helped him control this sensory overload, but his reassurances are interrupted when a ship retrieves Zod, Farah, and another Kryptonian named Namek, who are determined to take down Clark. Word of the alien presence in Smallville reaches the army, and Colonel Hardy approaches with helicopters and planes. Initially deeming all three aliens, including Clark, as hostile, Hardy orders the deployment of military weaponry against them. In an effort to protect the military, Clark engages with Farah, leading them to crash into an IHOP. Farah continues to taunt Clark. Clark then becomes enraged, sending Farah back in town, where Namek intervenes, and the two overwhelm Clark, causing him to use his laser vision. The military attempts to open fire, but Namek throws a van towards the helicopter, causing a man to fall, and Clark catches him. Meanwhile, more soldiers attempt to attack Farah and are immediately demolished. Namek then throws a train at Clark, allowing Farah and Namek to escape. Clark changes Hardy's perception when he saves the colonel and several soldiers. Afterward, Clark reunites with his mother and encounters Lois, who shares what Jor-El told her on the ship. Meanwhile, aboard his ship, Zod learns about the Codex's fate. It's revealed that Jor-El transplanted it into Clark's cells, making him the key to creating new Kryptonian life. Realizing that Clark doesn't need to be captured alive, Zod activates his plan. Zod initiates the World Engine, touching down near the South Indian Ocean while his ship hovers over Metropolis. Using the Phantom Drive, Zod connects with the World Engine through the Earth, initiating a process to terraform the planet and increase its gravitational pull. The devastating effects result in widespread destruction, including toppling cars and shaking skyscrapers. Using the information Lois obtained, Clark devises a plan to activate the pod he arrived in with his key, which will start the Phantom Drive inside. If it collides with Zod's ship, also equipped with a working drive, it will create a black hole, sending both the ship and its occupants into the Phantom Zone. Colonel Hardy, Dr. Hamilton, and Lois board a plane carrying the pod to Metropolis. Meanwhile, Zod leaves his ship to access the ship Clark found in the Arctic. Inside, he discovers a gestation chamber with many unborn Kryptonian fetuses. A projection of Jor-El warns Zod to halt his operation, but Zod, driven by his determination to revive Krypton, overrides Jor-El's commands, causing the hologram to disappear, while Superman heads to the World Engine in the Indian Ocean. He faces resistance from Kryptonian defenses using tentacles to fend him off. Deep beneath the World Engine, Clark eventually overcomes its output, crashing through it and causing an explosion that damages the device in Metropolis. Exhausted, he reaches out to the sun to recharge his strength, while Hardy guides the transport closer to Zod's ship. Zod quickly heads to Metropolis and attempts to destroy the military plane. Superman intervenes, crashing into the ship's control panel. Zod demands that Clark let him proceed with his plan to resurrect Krypton. Krypton had its chance, Clark declares, using his heat vision to dismantle the spacecraft. It crashes, destroying the Genesis chamber. Dr. Emil Hamilton figures out how to activate the engine of the pod but is interrupted when Farah intercepts the pod carrier, bashing through it. The men on board shoot her, but she brushes it off and punches each one. The captain heads into the cockpit and she follows him. Farah's efforts fail as Hardy steers the plane into the spacecraft. As the two phantom drives collide, the military aircraft, Zod's ship, and the people on board disappear into a created singularity. Clark successfully rescues Lois and ensures her safe landing on the ground. Nearby, the unmistakable sound of shifting metal draws Clark's attention, and he discovers Zod, seething with anger. Zod reveals to Clark that he was genetically engineered to serve as a Kryptonian general, with the mission of safeguarding Krypton and its people. However, with Krypton's demise, he has lost his purpose and now threatens to harm the humans under Clark's protection. During their confrontation, Zod further adapts to Earth's atmosphere. When they clash into a building, Zod gains control of his powers and activates his heat vision uncontrollably, causing the building to collapse. Zod then kicks a tank truck at Clark and the two have a clash. Zod hits him and sends Clark to the top of the building. Zod then declares that one of them will die and the two fly into each other. Zod expresses his anger, takes off his armor, and learns how to fly, and the two engage each other in the air. Clark with immense force punches Zod multiple times, sending him flying across the sky. Zod takes Clark into space, clashing into a satellite. Zod pushes the satellite into the Earth and the two fight alongside the debris and clash into a train station. There, Zod activates his heat vision, targeting a trapped family, and taunts Clark by challenging his love for these people. Clark pleads with Zod to spare them, but when Zod persists, Clark is left with no choice but to end Zod's rampage by fatally snapping the general's neck. Overwhelmed with sorrow, Clark grapples with the moral dilemma of taking a life, even though it was his only recourse. Lois arrives to console him. Later, Swanwick and Major Carey Ferris discover Superman taking down a surveillance drone. He informs them that he knows they had sent it to uncover his earthly home and demands an end to their search. He commits to defending Earth's security. Clark subsequently returns to Smallville, where he and Martha pay their respects at Jonathan's grave. Clark expresses his wish that his father could witness his actions, to which Martha reassures him that Jonathan did. When she inquires about Clark's plans moving forward, he explains his intention to work in a role that keeps him informed about global threats and issues. Clark heads to the Daily Planet building, where he is introduced to Lois Lane by Perry White. Lois, teasingly pretending not to recognize Clark, playfully welcomes him to the Daily Planet, to which Clark responds with a good-natured retort, indicating he knows her. If you liked this recap, be sure to check out our next video, Puss in Boots. The Last Wish is a film about Puss, a cat who has used up all of his lives and is down to one last one, and sets on a quest to grant a wish that will replenish the lost lives. See you guys on the next one.